they can be a blessing in disguise. They genuinely suck. But when you come out the other end of it, and maybe you've rekindled a passion, or maybe you've rediscovered a new career path, or maybe after this exploration, you've decided you really love what you're doing and you want to stay on that path. That's fantastic validation that you may not have been able to discover previously.
Hey friend, welcome back to the Career Flipper podcast. You already know this show is basically one big permission slip to toss the old rulebook out the window and reimagine work, life, and all the gloriously messy stuff in between. I'm Jenny Dempsey, your host, furniture flipper, reluctant but grateful holder of a corporate customer experience day job after 2 years post-layoff, and I'm also the super goofy, charming, paint-splattered, are we really doing this sidekick as we just try to figure it all out together. But here's the thing, when I got laid off in November 2022, I didn't know that there was going to be a grieving process. But looking back now, over those 2 years, I was absolutely in it. And the waves came out sideways. One week I'd spend hours rage cleaning the house, I was scrubbing my way back to self-worth, and I'd turn around and apply to 47 easy apply jobs on LinkedIn in one sitting, and then I would voice note my friends 1 minute and I'm like, it's fine, it's all good. And 5 minutes later, I was sobbing into the mic with a 20-minute long voice note. And on the outside, total fake smile plastered on. I'm great vibes, and inside I was crumbling. And the shame, there's so much shame. Everyone says, don't take it personal, it's just business. But when your paycheck, your title, and your LinkedIn bio have to update overnight, it feels personal, especially when you were loyal to a company. I thought I was broken. I thought I was crazy. Like everyone else had this secret manual and I somehow missed the memo. But really, I was just grieving a version of myself I didn't even know I had tied so tightly to my work. And once that identity cracked open, there was no going back. That old version of me, the one who thought she was just her job, she's gone. But here's the good news. Today's guest actually did write a handbook for this, and I am so honored to have had him on the show. Steve Jaffe is based in Los Angeles, California, and he is the author of the Layoff Journey from Dismissal to Discovery. After being laid off 4 times, yes, 4 times, he maps out the messy, non-linear stages of grief that come with job loss and created a guide to move through them with less shame, more compassion, and maybe even a little hope. So in this conversation with Steve, we talk about why layoffs knock the wind out of you and why there is so much grief tied in them, these weird non-linear stages that you're going to go through, and how to keep from dragging shame or embarrassment into your next role, or if you start your own business or whatever it is. And just really about how the surprising ways that layoffs can actually open doors to second chances. And Steve shares what to do if you've just been laid off, like literally laid off yesterday. That very first step that you can take when everything feels impossible is still a first step. So if you've just been laid off, if you've been laid off for a while and you're thinking about pivoting your career, or you just want reassurance that you're not crazy and definitely not alone in this mess as you're job searching after a layoff, welcome. You have found your place, my friends. This episode is for you. Let's get into the conversation with Steve now. So when I got laid off, there was no handbook. I didn't know what I was doing. I was honestly sitting on my couch crying because I moved from my remote office into the living room and was like, what just happened? And I didn't realize that the feelings that I was feeling were grief. I didn't realize these things. And again, I didn't think there was a book for it. I didn't even think to look up a book for it. But the power of podcasting and the fact that I almost didn't even start this podcast, and now it has brought me you, Steve, and you have found the podcast, and you literally wrote the book, The Layoff Journey from Dismissal to Discovery. And if I would have had this book in November 2022, when I first got laid off, there would have been a lot of things that I would have taken away. But I went through it, and when I was reading this book over the last few weeks, it just brought back a lot for me, and I have a lot to say and a lot of questions for you. Steve, welcome to the Career Flipper. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. And I'm glad that book resonated for you.
Thank you. Oh, we'll get into so many things. Resonated, made me cry, made me feel like, okay, it's going to be all right. All the things. Tell everybody a little bit about you, where you are, and what you're doing now. And then we'll dive into all the ways you got to this point of writing this book.
Sure. I should say I'm a San Diego native. I know you're in San Diego. And so I still live in Southern California, just up the road in LA. And I'm now proud to say I'm an author. I spent a long time in advertising and marketing across a lot of different career paths, if you will, and industries. We share a common bond in also being in the software and tech space. I was a product marketer for SaaS startup, a number of them. I had always wanted to write a book. I just didn't have the subject matter. And summer 2023, I experienced my fourth layoff. And I had found that I had some experience there. I like to say that I have my 10,000 hours of experience in being, somebody who's laid off. And I found that those skills and that experience was something I wanted to convey to my coworkers that were laid off with me. And the evolution of that is what became the fire that sparked this book, and really helping people navigate those stages of grief after job loss.
Well, I'm really glad that you got laid off and wrote this book. I know that sounds weird, but I know you get it. I know people who've gotten laid off and who've moved, through these different, parts of the journey, which we'll get into, will get that comment that it's oddly enough the worst moment, but also the best thing that can happen. And I just think 4 layoffs, like I had one and I felt crushed, and it's 2 years later and or 3 years later, gosh, and I still feel, there's still residual things that we'll talk about. And so if you, without giving too much away that's in the book, like if you can kind of sum it up, like what was it like the first time you got laid off? What was that experience like for you? And, these things that you wrote about, did you know about them then? Were you just kind of going through it? Like, tell me a little more.
Yeah. My first layoff, I had zero coping skills. And that's probably why it affected me as hard as it did. So first layoff, it was spring 2001. I was living in San Francisco. I had just gotten married. I was working at an ad agency, and we were pretty successful. I was successful. The agency was successful. Things were going great. And suddenly, without any warning, I was called into a conference room one day, and very short order told, "Thank you. The client's cutting their budget, and we have to cut staff, and you have 5 minutes to clean out your desk." And I was completely blindsided and in total shock. It just was devastating. I found that I was somebody who derived my personal value and identity from my job. I was what I did, and having then lost that job, I didn't know who I was. So I spent about 18 months really, really in turmoil. And then fast forward again, summer 2023, fourth layoff, and it was like water off a duck's back. And what I found was that over the course of those 4 layoffs, I had learned a set of skills that helped me navigate those challenges. I learned a healthy kind of work-life balance. I learned how to find identity outside of my work. I learned just kind of baseline mind, body, spirit, healthy living that gave me the resources when life threw me any challenge, including the layoff, that let me come out the other side, maybe without as much time spent coping and managing. So that's what I laid out in the book is that experience and those lessons, so that my goal is when somebody reads the book, they're able to process their own layoff, not in 18 months, but in just a short period of time, that will then help them get back on the road to their next job, and move past this in a way that it doesn't become like a life or career defining moment in a negative way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yes to all of that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a lot of speechless moments here. But I think, I mean, the comment that you just spoke on of like fourth layoff, like water off a duck's back. Wow. To get to this point, and also touching on work being identity, because that is exactly who I was as well. I literally thought customer experience in the tech world, that's who I am. That's what I've done. That's what I know. That is all I'm good at. These are the things I told myself, and I didn't question it. I didn't question anything else. I didn't question the fact that I was, working so much and putting my creative endeavors on the side, even though, maybe it's just for fun. Like I was still like, no, or like putting, not seeing friends, all these things. And then I get laid off and I'm like, it was a smack in the face that I didn't know I needed. But I think what I love most about your book, Steve, is that, and I'm holding it in front of me, I know everyone can't see, but it's broken down into chapters by stages. And when I had first gotten layoff, because I am a newbie in the layoff world, I knew there was some grief because 6 months prior to getting laid off, my dad died. And I was already in the stages of grief of trying to figure it out, because on his deathbed, which it sounds like I'm making up the story, but he was literally in the hospital in Glendora and laying in his bed looking at me. And he's like, the last words that I heard him say to me were, I wish I wouldn't have worked so much. And I was just like, here he is laying on his deathbed and he's telling me this because I didn't get to know him as well as I could throughout my life because he was always working.
Yeah.
And it was pivotal. And then 6 months later to get laid off, my whole identity completely shook. But I didn't realize these stages. I figured, okay, yes, there's grief. I did lose something. But you also talk about the denial phase and the pain and, all like depression, acceptance, negotiation, reconstruction. I'm reading them out of order, but there's renewal at the end. And it's just like, these are things that I didn't realize that I was going to have to experience. And as you're going through them, it's like, I just kind of think of molasses. You're trying to get through this and it's like a sludge some of these times. And then you have this glimmer of hope because maybe you get a job interview, but then they're like, oh, that's not going to work out. I had 400 job rejections in 2 years. And I was just like, who am I? And then I just started picking up furniture off the side of the road and fixing it up and selling it. And I'm like, this is who I am now.
Right.
Going a little unhinged. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about, as you go through these stages, as you mentioned, whether it's 18 months that you go through it, whether it's 5 years, like there's no time frame. There's no promise of how long it will take. And I think and maybe you can speak to this too, years later, things might come up. I know you mentioned in here, work friendships and how your relationships are and how there's a level of trust that might not be there right away or just different things that may come up later. But can you talk about the stages and like, as you move through them, how it's really freaking hard.
Yeah.
And you may not know. Yeah.
Yeah. So the stages of grief are interesting. They were created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross as she was working with terminally ill patients. And she observed that they all went through this similar kind of process. And then similarly, as the research went on, the loved ones, the friends and family of those terminally ill people also went through this. And now it's kind of the accepted maybe methodology around how people process traumatic events in their life. So whether it's a divorce or a layoff, your body has a way of processing and moving through it in a way that emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, it is sort of inherent to our person, right? So each stage is unique, and not everyone goes through every stage. Maybe, certainly, maybe not every stage is pronounced as another one. Some may hold larger weight than others based on somebody's life experience and their own circumstances. And it's rare that you may experience them linearly, concurrently. It's a bit maybe less orderly than it's laid out in the book as like subsequent chapters. But I can guarantee you, it's likely that you will feel some, if not all of these to some degree. And some of them kind of like protect us. So when you're in denial and you're in that shock and awe and your body starts kind of shutting down, it's your own body's safety mechanism. It's a safety response because you're being overwhelmed and flooded with this stimuli that you can't possibly process all at once, right? Yeah. Your paycheck is gone. Your insurance is gone. Your job, your title, your friends, your colleagues, all in a matter of minutes. You can't process that. So your body starts like turning things off, right? Yeah. Anger is a great way to vent. It's a great way to express something that's been taken from you. Mindful of doing it in a healthy way, right, and not like ruminating in anger, but it's a normal response. And I think all of these things, giving yourself the space and grace to say, this is normal, and accepting that whatever it is that you're feeling, it's okay. And just to kind of sit with that, I think one of the things that we want to avoid, and one of my goals for this book is to remove some of the shame and embarrassment that come from a layoff. That's really detrimental. And it's unfortunately something that people who have been laid off tend to feel pretty heavily. It weighs on them. A layoff isn't something that you generally are responsible for. It's not like you did something to deserve it. It was not like you weren't a bad performer. There's a whole other set of circumstances of why somebody may get fired, but this isn't that. This is from no fault of your own. Yeah. So you shouldn't have that shame or embarrassment because you're sort of a victim of the circumstances. Right. And these are all the things that I try and break down so that people don't carry that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of that journey of moving through the stages so that when you do get to the end of them, or at least to a point where they're not holding you back. Because one of the challenges is if you don't feel these things and manage them, they can manifest in how you show up to job interviews, even how you maybe write your resume. And if you do get hired, maybe baggage that you bring into that new job. So it's really important. What I like to say is before you jump into writing your resume and sending them out, going on job interviews, work through some of this stuff. It will serve you down the line, but also importantly, you may end up doing the work and finding that that career path that you were on no longer serves you. It's not a passion. It's not something that is in line with your personal values, maybe, and maybe it doesn't bring you joy. Maybe the industry that you're in is undergoing contraction and it's time for a career pivot, right? Mm-hmm. So, but sometimes layoffs are the opportunity for a pivot like yourself. Yeah. You found something that I think probably brings you joy, gives you a lot of freedom. And it's in a totally unexpected area that you would have never found if you had continued on the path that you were on. And sometimes layoffs allow people to discover that side of maybe another life or a new life.
Yeah. So many things that I want to touch on here because the shame part, I'm going to start there with that because there's kind of this expectation that when you get laid off, you go on LinkedIn and you make this post that says, it's the exit post, but you don't actually say why. You're just like, I am starting a new chapter and I'm leaving, my time at this company, blah, blah. And it's supposed to be this positive, uplifting thing, but you don't actually say the thing. And I see these posts, and I did one myself because I thought, I was talking to other colleagues who got laid off. Like, did you do your post yet? Did you do your post? Like, no, not yet. But like, I just was like, do I have to? That feels weird, but I did it because of the pressure. And because I thought, oh, this is what you do. And I even had a colleague a few weeks later was just like, she called me and she's like, I'm applying for a new job. Will you be a reference? I'm like, sure. She's like, just don't mention the layoff. I don't want them to know I got laid off. And it was very much like, wait, what? You're not supposed to say it. And this was so new territory for me that I was like, but it wasn't your fault. Like, why would they judge you for that? But it was like, no. So I instantly was like, oh my God, I can't talk about this. And then when I did start to just network with other colleagues and share what was going on, they made that also very clear. Oh yeah, don't put that out on any social media. Don't talk about, don't tell employers, don't mention that. Just say you left, for whatever reason, or, just make something up. But I really took this, I carried that shame. And I did not do anything about it. I just kept going and applying to jobs and literally feverishly writing my resume over and over, applying it to each individual job, clicking the, quick apply on LinkedIn and just going through it like so quick, getting ghosting or, hearing nothing back or getting instant rejections or getting in interviews. And it's just not the right fit. And it was just like, what am I doing? And I remember taking this moment where it's like, I think I need a day to not be sitting at the computer for 6 hours doing this, because there is this expectation that you lose your job and then you're supposed to just get one again. Like it's supposed to be that easy. But when you break down all of these things and exactly what you said, like taking that time before you just jump into it, you may not go through all of these stages, but to give yourself permission to feel that, I was not doing. And it did manifest quickly. I am a person who feels my feelings and I can't hide them. And it was a lot of crying. It was a lot of over exercising. It was a lot of just pushing myself when I didn't want to and just thinking that I had to do all these things. But when I really sat down, and especially, this sounds so cheesy, but I feel like you'll get this. When I started piecing together the furniture, finding a piece of trash on the side of the road that someone's throwing away, right? I saw myself in that. I saw that table and I was like, that's how I feel right now. I was able to take my feelings and put it into this tangible item. And then I took it in and was like, I have zero experience in that. I didn't know how to use an orbital sander. I didn't know how to, like the difference of paint stains, oil and water base. I didn't know these things, but I was just like, you know what, I'm going to figure this out. And after that one table that I completely revamped and just like brought it back to life, I was like, there's this part of myself that I felt like I was doing that for. And that the chapter that you have about reconstruction or reinvention or restoration really applied to me, because I feel like even though furniture restoration has turned into a side business, which I'll share more about that. And my goal is for so much more at this point, but it became a healing tool. And I think and you mentioned this and you're like, there are things when that are aligned with our values, like to find it. It doesn't have to turn out to be a business. It doesn't have to, but sometimes we'll do silly things when we're in these stages of grief. It kind of unlocks. I like to say it cracked my mind open, but like, I never would have done this had I not gotten laid off and had this complete identity shift. And to see a piece of trash that now I get text messages all the time from friends of pictures. I can't tell you how many pictures of trash furniture I have. I'm like, and they'll drop a pin. It's here on this corner. Perfect. I'm going to go pick it up. And it's things like that that became very healing and restorative in the weirdest way. And so I think leaning into your book, like really being open and accepting of the shame that comes in, letting yourself feel that, but doing the things that may feel really kind of wacky and leaning into that, because they could lead to this next big thing that it just, you never saw yourself doing. And suddenly now you're doing it and you can't imagine not ever doing it.
Right. Yeah. There's an opportunity for a pivot after a layoff that you just don't have the time to discover when you're working, 60 hours a week. When you're just head down on your career path, you don't have that opportunity for like introspection and examination. But in the pause that a layoff presents, you're given an opportunity to just do some of that exploration and discovery. And like layoffs suck. And I feel like they can be a blessing in disguise. They genuinely suck. But when you come out the other end of it, and maybe you've rekindled a passion, or maybe you've rediscovered a new career path, or maybe after this exploration, you've decided you really love what you're doing and you want to stay on that path. That's fantastic validation that you may not have been able to discover previously.
Yeah.
So whatever that journey is for you, taking this pause to just kind of do some work, mind, body, spirit. I'm a big believer in a holistic approach. All of those things will serve you well, not only in managing this layoff, but in any challenge life throws at you. It can be an opportunity to find some resilience, to find some tenacity, to foster some grit, it can be, it can be an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely can be. Whether or not you pivot, whether you stay in the same type of role with a different company, you can move to a better company culture. You can move to something completely different, that you learn something new, and who knows what it will lead to in your career. And I think it really helps to just give yourself permission to be curious.
Yeah.
And one of the parts in your book, it's toward the end, and I have it highlighted because it's a section titled, what chapter is this in? Actually, it's toward the end, but it's, I'm just going to read the section title. It's How to Ask Better Questions. Mm-hmm. And I think I really loved this because one of the things that, as I mentioned a few times during our chat, I don't know what I'm doing, and I didn't know what I was doing then. I'm still figuring it out now. But I think asking questions, whether or not you think they're dumb, just asking them and, really putting yourself out there to get curious, and you say, not judgmental, and really just ask questions. If you see someone on LinkedIn and they're doing a job that maybe you're interested in, I don't know, slide into their DMs. Or if you see someone, you meet them at a networking event, set up a time for coffee. Like, just ask people, what's it like doing this? Or how did you get to this point? And get really curious and ask yourself questions as well. I think that's the thing that eventually, when I kind of was like, after some of the smoke and dust settled, or sawdust, I guess I could say at this point, after the sawdust kind of settled, I started to just ask myself a little bit more of like, well, what am I doing? And what do I want to do? Instead of just thinking, what does my boss want me to do? And what do I think, society wants me to do? And I started to just ask myself different types of questions. And it became something that asking yourself a question as you are also asking others questions for things, you start to see how no one knows what they're doing. But people are still open to supporting and helping and giving wisdom and sharing their experiences. And you suddenly feel less alone. You're like, oh, okay. It's okay to have these feelings, but it's also okay to not know. And it's okay to try and mess up. Making mistakes is amazing. Failing is amazing. Let's keep doing that more and celebrating what you mess up on, because you just learn so much. And through all of these furniture restoration projects, especially the early ones where I didn't have the right safety gear, or I was, I smacked my finger on a nail when I was like, what am I doing? Or the wrong stain, or finding out I'm allergic to paint stripper. Who knew? And I get very bad sinus infections. But these little mistakes have made it so much more accessible for me to be open to the grieving process and to be open to moving on. Just this past January, I really it had been 2 years, couldn't find a job. I was doing little odds and ends of contracting work and this and that. But barely paid the bills. I was doing the furniture. And of course, it just takes a while to build your own business. And one of my friends had a full-time corporate job that was open. And I really was just like, I don't think I can go back again. I can't trust corporate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you talk about this in your book as well, like going back into it. And like we even just, I mean, you briefly mentioned of like, there's like this element of what the baggage you carry with you when you step into something new. And so I ended up taking it, and it's it's the company, the people at the company are great. Obviously, I don't want to be working in corporate. It's hybrid, so I'm not used to that, and I'm adjusting. And it's actually, the job is great on paper, and I'm so grateful for a paycheck, but I just want to be in the garage building my own business and working on furniture. And so I had to reframe what I was doing. And I was like, this is not going to be my forever job. I decide that, not a company. Yeah. If they lay me off, cool, whatever. Just like you said, water off a duck's back. But I am deciding that, and they are now the investor in my dreams, and I'm able to build the things on the side and, really make things happen. But I don't think I ever could have gotten to that place if I would have just gotten a job immediately after getting laid off. I would have carried it all in. Now I'm struggling with different types of things. Trusting corporate, don't do it. I can't. I'm not there yet. But I do focus on my values, the connection, the relationships with other people, my creativity, how I can bring furniture flipping into, I don't know, something with customer experience. Like, how can I do this? Because I can't show up at work the way that I used to and just do what I'm told. And it's very interesting. And so I'm curious, you've been laid off 4 times. So you've had that as well. You got laid off, you found something new. What was it like for you? And that kind of, maybe the first time you got laid off and then going back to work afterwards, were there any like residual things that you found that were kind of challenging? Or you mentioned a couple things, but
I think one of the things I struggled a lot with was that somehow this was my fault. I did something to deserve this. I was somehow like less than, and it was a statement on maybe my work or my performance, even though it wasn't. I carried that for a while. It was hard to say, no, you know what? I was just a name on the list that they needed to cut salary because they had to drive revenue to the bottom line. And the client cut their budget, and there was nothing that could be done to it. So that took a long time to come to terms with. I think a scar that took me a long time to heal from, that I'm not sure I'm totally recovered from, is the embarrassment of, you have to put your stuff in a box. Like, you have 5 minutes to clean out your desk, and then you have to walk out the door. And a lot of places I've worked are open concept. So you're doing this in front of everybody. That was something that I don't think I ever recovered from, because after that, I brought in like very few items, like personal items, to an office. So if you ever came in my office, it was always like empty and stark, because I never wanted that embarrassment of cleaning out my desk in front of people, So that was something that, and I write about that experience in the book, that was too much. I couldn't do that again. So there are things like that you carry. And I felt like, okay, well, me not bringing personal items into the office, it isn't that big of a deal, right? But me feeling like I'm maybe not intelligent, or I'm not successful, or I'm not like a good worker because I got laid off, that had some negative implications that I definitely needed to work through. Mm-hmm. So, I also talk about depression as well. I when I went through that first layoff, I didn't realize I had a propensity for depression, and suddenly here I am, really depressed. And that was also a bit of a journey for me to understand how my mind can easily go to some dark places, and which means then I need to fight really hard to keep myself positive self-talk, positive self-esteem, all of those things. So, and fortunately, that's had really good ramifications throughout my life, because now I actively process and pursue like positive self-talk, and I've done a lot of work there. That's helped me in other ways, including layoffs, and through all four of them. So, yeah, it's a process and it's a journey, and it is difficult. Hopefully, through the book, I'm able to make it a little bit less difficult for people by giving them the roadmap that I followed, and where I found some comfort and some success.
Yeah. Well, you definitely lay it out in a way that's so realistic. I mean, you share your stories. We've woven in an additional to other stats that you have, or other, people's stories in here. And then you also have questions throughout that people can answer. And I think I may have mentioned like some of the questions, like, especially in the earlier, chapters, the harder parts, like sometimes it's hard to answer these or to reflect inward and be like, I have to admit this about this. And so going through there, I feel like, for me personally, it's the kind of book that, yeah, I got laid off in 2022 and now like things are very different, but it's a book that I would probably revisit because I know there is still residual of things that I am working through. And I think that going back and looking at the questions again and, really thinking through them is kind of this, it's a nice way to look at your personal growth and see where you've gone through this journey. You have it it's in stone in a way when you write it in here and you write your answers and you go back a year later and you're like, wow, I have been through this. Wow. Yeah. I do see progress. I am better now. And wow, I can't believe where I am now, or, whatever it is. And then, I just think that that's, I don't know. It's a gift to have. As cheesy as that sounds, it is an absolute gift to have, because being able to see your own progress through a journey like this is incredibly rewarding and just keeps you motivated to move forward and not just sit in the, messy, which we all have to go through. But if you just keep sitting there and don't try to move out through, these ways that you experience all the feelings, you'll miss out on so many opportunities. And Steve, you've outlined this so well. And I feel like we could talk about this for a very long time. And I know that it's just, I'm just really, really grateful again that you got laid off and that you wrote this book for us, because now we have it available to learn from and to move through. And I know so many people listening to this may be in this exact situation and may want to pick this book up because maybe they just got laid off yesterday. Yeah. And I am curious, before we wrap up and I have you share where they can buy it, I'm wondering, Steve, if you can just give one last piece of advice to the person who maybe they did just get laid off yesterday. What would you tell them?
Yeah. I would tell them that it's okay, that the feelings that you're feeling are okay and they're normal, and it's going to be hard, but you're going to get through this. And this isn't a declaration on who you are as a person or what you've done. This is a small page in a much larger chapter in a much larger book. So it's okay, but you're going to get through this.
Well said. That kind of gave me chills, because I wish that I could have heard those words the day after I got laid off. And, but thank you, Steve, so much for being here. How can people find you and connect with you and pick up a copy of The Layoff Journey?
Sure. Well, just go to Amazon.com and you can type in The Layoff Journey. You'll find my book there. You can learn more on my website, thestevejaffe.com. There's a free chapter there. So if you want to check it out before you purchase it, feel free to download the free chapter. You can find me on Substack. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Steve Jaffe, The Layoff Journey. And we can also connect on LinkedIn. And I would love to connect with anyone. I would love to hear about their layoff journey, where they are in it. I'd love to be a service to anybody that's going through what can be a really difficult time.
Thank you, Steve. That's so generous for you to give your time. And I really hope everyone does pick up a copy because it will, it's going to really impact your layoff experience if that's what you're going through right now. Again, it's the book that I wish that I would have had. And I am so glad you wrote it. Thank you so much for being here, Steve. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Thanks for hanging out with me and Steve on this episode of the Career Flipper podcast. You'll find all the ways to connect with Steve in the show notes. If this conversation lit even the tiniest spark or made you feel a little less like you're out here flailing at this alone, the best way to keep this energy going is to hit subscribe, drop a review, and send this episode to a friend who's also mid-career plot twist. That's how we grow this messy, magical little corner of our flipping community. And at the end of the day, here's something that I want you to remember. You're not behind, you're not broken, and you are definitely not too late. Starting again is always on the table. And that first step might feel terrifying. You might ugly cry through it. But it could also be the step that changes everything, no matter how tiny it seems. So go on, take the step, even if it's messy, especially if it's messy. Because really, what's the best that could happen?